Okay, so I think this was a mistake, or maybe not, but let's go ahead and share what we did anyway. Not long ago, Leica was kind enough to loan us the brand new Leica Q2. I've linked our full review down in the description below. In short, in that review, Leigh absolutely loved it. And behind the scenes, I loved it too. What strikes me most about the Q2 is not only the amazing image quality results that Leica is famous for, but really the whole package, including the handling of the camera. It just sort of melts into your hands and makes you want to use it. For the uninitiated, the Leica Q2 is a 47 million pixel full frame camera. Its lens is a fixed 28mm lens, and it does have autofocus, unlike Leica's M-mount interchangeable lens cameras. It's got 4K video, maximum aperture of f1.7, image quality to die for, an amazing OLED viewfinder, the list goes on and on. No one feature of the Q2 might be life-changing, but again, it's that whole package working together, along with the grace, style, and elegance that you'd expect from a Leica. That all together is what makes it truly great. And then we had to send that Leica Q2 back to Leica, but we won't let the dream die. The easiest and best solution would be for us to purchase a Leica Q2, but then this video would be over because I'd just be out shooting with it. So, like any good video, let's make it more complicated and see if we can augment some of the things that we already have to try to bring that same experience to the table. In doing that, we took two slightly different approaches to try to duplicate the magic. First, let's show you what we did. For one, we took the Fuji X100F, which on paper does have many similarities to the Nikon Q2. It's also a fixed lens, point and shoot camera on steroids. The pixel count is lower than the Q2. The maximum aperture is f2 versus f1.7 on the Q2. And the focal length is 35mm instead of 28mm. Now, as you might have noticed here, we changed the focal length of the X100F with an adapter lens that screws onto the front. It's made by Fuji specifically for this purpose, and note that you don't lose the f2 aperture with it. Image quality was surprisingly good, and with the latest version of the adapter lens, the camera, through the magic of magnets, knows that you have the screw-on lens attached. In fact, we did a full review of that lens, and I'll put that link in the description below also. The Fuji, with or without the adapter lens, has great image quality. It's easy and fun to use, and it has all the manual buttons, dials, and even an aperture ring to keep me busy and happy. Is it the Leica Q2? Not quite. It's got a lower resolution, and from a handling perspective, it just doesn't have that same super duper solid tangible/intangible sensation that the Leica has. But it is a less expensive option that can definitely scratch the itch. One thing that I like about the Leica that the Fuji does not quite have is the virtual teleconverter options. Now let me explain. The Fuji does have a cool mode where you can set the front ring to zoom in at fixed focal lengths. It's not a zoom, it's sort of like changing lenses. Now, it's not magic, it's a crop, costing you resolution as you crop, as you'd expect. Now, for Fuji, this is a JPEG only feature. Leica has a similar feature on the Q2, but you're starting with 47 million pixels versus the Fuji's 24. Also with the Leica, you're shooting a raw DNG file, and the crop is actually setting the crop flag in the Adobe RAW file. So you get the crop, you do lose resolution on the crop, but you're in RAW, and if you'd like, you can back out the crop or change it afterwards. What this means is that the crop version is the default, but unlike the Fuji, you do have a RAW file, and unlike the Fuji, you can undo or change that crop later on if desired. Also, and here's the real key point for this feature for me, with the Leica's resolution, those cropped images still are formidable in terms of resolution. It's a fixed lens camera that really can act like it has a few different lenses available. No doubt, the Fuji is a compelling, fun choice, and we've been getting plenty of mileage out of ours. Like the Q2, the Fuji has autofocus, but still gives you plenty of control, including some clever manual focus assist options. One downside to the X100F is that it does not offer 4K video, and we've gone entirely to 4K in our video workflow, so it's a stills only camera for us. which frankly doesn't really bother me. It's small, lightweight, fun to use, and it really does deliver on image quality. Okay, with the Fuji X100F now set up as a makeshift Q2, let's look at the other option that we put together. Here's one of our two Nikon Z cameras. We have the Z6 and the Z7. I think this is the 7. It has a Leica M-mount adapter on it and a Voigtlander M-mount 28mm f2 lens. Let's get right into it. The M-mount is fully manual, but mirrorless cameras like the Z6 and Z7 bring a couple of things to the table here. One, because of the physical properties of the camera, namely the proximity of the mount to the sensor, an adapted configuration like this is entirely possible, can be done. Mirrorless truly is the adapted lens renaissance as far as I'm concerned. Two, although the camera can't control the aperture on the lens, that's fully manual. If you shoot aperture priority on the Z6 or 7, the camera can meter with this setup, so you're moving the aperture ring, which in this case is on front of the lens, towards the front of the lens. And then the camera can set the shutter speed, or you can use auto ISO and all the cool things that you like to do, as long as you're thinking in the mode of aperture priority. Now, one difference with this setup compared to the Q2 or the X100F is that this is manual focus only. It's an M-mount lens, which is inherently manual focus. The Z6 and 7 do have focus peaking, and in the description below, we link to a video all about setting those manual options up on Z-series cameras. You can even set it up, like I have here, that with a touch of a button, the viewfinder zooms into the selected focus area, expands it out so you can fine-tune focus with that magnified view. And once you get the hang of doing that on the fly, you'll be manually focusing like a pro from the 1970s. The elegance of this setup with the Z camera is that you're using an interchangeable lens body, which brings its own flexibility to use other lenses. And for the cost of this lens, which is about $600, and the adapter, which is about $20, you're at that 28mm sweet spot focal length with an awesome prime lens and an overall minimal experience. Rather than a one-trick camera body, though, you can easily remount that giant zoom lens later on and be firing away. Now, for me in the Z6, the Voigtlander is a departure from all of the electronics, and it helps me focus on the image. A lot of people do say that manual focus forces you to slow down, and as much as I really hate to admit it, it really does for me. As I'm manually focusing, I find myself fine-tuning my composition, taking a deep breath, and really trying to get the most out of the image. I think with autofocus sometimes, I'm already thinking about the next shot before I've even taken the first shot. I think we're all guilty of that sometimes. With this Voigtlander setup on a 45 megapixel camera like the Z7, you're getting the Q2's resolution on a rock solid camera body with plenty of functionality. The real main difference with this setup is that you're working with the M mount, so you're focusing manually, much as you would on a Leica M camera. Also, I mentioned I'm working with Voigtlander optics here, although you certainly could be using a Leica lens in this setup, an M-mount lens, and the Leica Q2 certainly uses a Leica lens permanently attached to the camera. Overall, I'm really pleased with the Voigtlander, and I do get a bit of a thrill out of taking a lens intended for an entirely different camera and system and using it on my Z6. Mirrorless's physical characteristics can really turn your camera into a bit of a chameleon when it comes to mixing bodies and lenses, even when it comes to vintage lenses and some truly radical combinations. Now, why do any of this? Why not just put the right lens for the job on the latest and greatest camera body? Why add a Q2 or an X100F when you have an interchangeable lens camera that can shoot at 28mm with a zoom or a state-of-the-art prime lens? For me, these special setups and dedicated fixed lens cameras, I call them my therapy cameras. We, meaning Leigh and I, shoot every day for the channel, either creating content or testing great new gear. And in doing that, it can be easy to lose sight of why we love our camera gear in the first place. These should be for joy, but a lot of times they're for work. So when I go out in the world with the Q2, the X100F, the Z6 with a totally manual prime lens, it's for me and what my art feels like being on that day. Those are images that I rarely share, and frankly, guys, sometimes I don't even look at them, either when I get home or even later on. I know some of you are like that too. It's about the process, and that's okay for me. Now, give me a fixed lens, a simple camera, and a fun day trip, and I can take it from there, even if they're not great shots, even if I'm not going to do much or anything with them later on. So let me turn that around and ask you, what's your therapy camera? What do you pick up when you want to chill out, take some pictures, and keep the pressure off? Let me know down in the comments. Or maybe you haven't found that therapy camera yet, but what would it be like? Even if it's not out there, even if it's not real, even if there's not one camera that does what you'd be looking for in a therapy camera, let me know what that is. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching. And as we try out new things with the mirrorless adapter renaissance, we'll be sure to keep you updated.